Hello, welcome to the Edmunds CarCast podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndre, here with Alistair Weaver. How you doing?
I'm all right, thanks, Matt. Friday morning as we record this, the end of the week.
It
Yeah,
is
crazy time at the moment.
it's a
Busy
bit
time.
of Mustang Day. There's a new Mustang that came out recently. There was a little event here in LA where they launched that. I went to that event. I think you had somebody there, but you were not there.
I was on kid duty, so yes, we
Yeah.
did. We did have somebody there. I think Ryan from the team was there, but I was on kid duty that night, so sadly
Um,
missed it.
But also I wanted to follow up with you guys about your supercharged Mustang that you were working on as well. Now that you've done some testing and stuff on it, we've spoken about it several times. I know when Brian was on the show last time, we touched on it, but we didn't have enough time to like break down his video and the installation and the dyno and stuff. But maybe we can get into some of that. But first things first is. Uh, Ford has teamed up with Vaughn Gittin Jr. His brand is called RTR, Ready to Rock. And he's been in the Ford family for 20 years now. He was a young guy in 2005 and got sponsorship with them for drifting and went on to win a couple of championships and really kind of built up something kind of fun and interesting behind that brand. And along the way, he had developed a number of aesthetic upgrades and some performance upgrades and wheels and things like that for the Mustangs. And it's all just been aftermarket parts that you would throw onto your car. But now he has teamed up with Ford to offer a turnkey package from the Ford dealers that is branded RTR. And this is the only time Ford has done that aside from Shelby, uh, their GT 500 and stuff. So everything else that's been out there has been what we would call a post-title package. For a lot of you are familiar with that, right? You would buy your Mustang, you could take it to Celine or whatever, right? Or Celine's a little different, but you can you could take it to the Shelby factory in Vegas and get one of their Super Snakes or one of their big trucks, their Super Snake trucks, and it's a post-title package. You buy the car first and you go to them. This is from Ford, built on the Ford assembly line and offered in Ford dealers. So I would imagine how exciting that is for Vaughn Gittin Jr. to go, we finally got it. We finally got a car we wanted from the factory and showroom floors that we got to participate in.
Yeah, and I think this is. I mean, obviously, look, it's a marketing thing, right? This is why these partnerships exist, and I think across so many different sectors of the market now, you see in fashion, you see collaborations, you see it in, headphone manufacturers do
Yeah.
collaborations. I think, Bowers and Williams is one with McLaren and things like that. So you see this all across the industry. It's no surprise that the car world is trying to get into it. And maybe we should do a show. So I'm going off a tangent here, but maybe we should do a show where we look at like some of the collaborations over the years. I remember like Gucci. I mean, Gucci did a Fiat 500. I think Armani did one a couple of years ago. There's been some really weird kind of collaborations.
Yeah.
This one feels a lot more sensible because it's kind of an extension of their motorsport. And for me, what it's about is just trying to get younger people excited about a Mustang and trying to produce a kind of cool, interesting looking Mustang that's attached to something that, even if the man himself is getting on a bit, feels youthful,
Yeah.
at a price and probably an insurance cost which is a bit more accessible. It's interesting that it's based on the EcoBoost engine. It's not based on the V8. Hopefully, they haven't announced the pricing, but hopefully the pricing's somewhere in the 40s, which of course is not cheap, but is not, what do you think that we paid about 70 grand for a Dark Horse Mustang? I think this is an attempt to do something that's a little bit more interesting at a price point that's a bit more accessible.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I'm expecting this thing probably to come in around 45, 46 grand. But yes, to back up, you hit it. The big feature. The big feature is this is the 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine. They're not starting with the V8 car because they have the Mustang GT They have the Dark Horse. They're working on another high performance variant that could be a Shelby, probably not a Shelby, and but there was not a lot going on with the EcoBoost cars, which is a fun car. And one of the things that they really pointed out that the EcoBoost car is the closest to a 50-50 weight ratio this side of a GTD. Like it has good balance on that car, and something that, like for you guys who do so much track time is why you appreciate the Cayman Porsche, right? So much is compared to the 911. 911 is great, but there's just something about that rear mid engine basically right behind you and giving you such great balance. So 2.3 liter EcoBoost. There isn't any additional horsepower, but Ford has a patent on this anti-lag technology, something they developed on the Ford GT that spools up the turbos, especially in between gears, to keep that thing basically on the pipe, if you will. And that's been implemented in this car. Now, it's just a calibration, it's a tuning. It's just a lot of them finite tuning on the ECU calibration to make this work. And apparently, it really kind of does its job. At 315 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, there are a few other options, or not options, but upgrades that you get with the RTR package. You can get it with the big brake package. It's Brembo 6-piston in the front, 4-piston in the rear. They got the wheels pushed out a little bit. It's got a little bit more of a 30 millimeter offset to push it out. It's squared up, so it's got the same wheel and tire size on 9.5-inch wheels all the way around. I think 19 9.5s. It's got their drift brake, which of course is what you'd expect with a Vaughn Gittin Jr. car.
So the drift brake, we should explain the drift brake, because I
Yeah,
think a lot of people are sort of wondering what the hell that is. So this is basically you have to, if I remember right, again, it was only last week I drove one. You have to put it. It's a feature that I think you dial up through the screen, if I remember rightly. So it's not just there
yes.
by default, but it basically means you've got almost like a rally car handbrake, that you're not having to push a button, yank it a thing. You just sort of pull, and it locks the rear end and allows you to do handbrake turns, as we call it in England. And what do you call it? Is it still a handbrake turn over here? What's it called over here? It
Yeah,
was still called an e-brake turn. That sounds ridiculous.
yeah. And then yeah, I mean, I guess a handbrake turn,
Or a drift
e-brake
brake
turn.
turn.
Yeah, yeah.
It's also the
Now we just
idea.
call it drift brake, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and the bit that I've tried with, and I've used this at the track a couple of times. So the idea is you can either do like a 180, or you can use it to basically kick the tail out and then hold the drift. That's the idea. So you put a little, so basically you turn in, you put a bit of steering lock into the car, then you yank the handbrake, the rear steps out, then you jump back on the gas, and then you're into a drift. Now, depending on how much power you've got and how much tire you've got, that's the same thing as basically getting to the, to the edge of front end grip and then jumping on the gas. But it's an easier way of doing it, and it's certainly a kind of, if you're trying to show off in a car park or something, not that I'd condone that, but if you were, then this is an easy way of doing it. So again, it's like a cool little fun feature, and it also fits with, Ford CEO Jim Farley's come out and said we're not doing boring cars anymore. This is all of these cars that we make have got to be kind of iconic. So it sort of fits with where they're heading. I kind of like it. I think it's got a
It looks like it's a fun car, and I like that they're saying we have some fun performance features built into a car that's not the more expensive V8 cars of the Dark Horse. Like if you get this thing in the mid 40s, that's a fun car to get. And it is a serial numbered car, and it makes it a little special. And I don't know if it's really gonna become a huge collector's item, but I think it makes it something that's kind of fun and accessible to Vaughn's audience is a younger audience. But also something a little bit more affordable and a little bit more fuel efficient, and like you said, less probably an insurance cost. So I think it's a fun car. And on the issue of the drift brake, Yes, I think what they're doing with that drift brake as well is because you go into the screen and you put it in a certain mode and then you have that handle, it's doing things with the calibration to make that drifting process easier and safer. It's not just a hot shoe like yourself going in and going, I can just do this with a brake or I can just flick the rear out or like if you don't have those skills, this makes it a little bit easier so you can uh, learn those skills. It's like having rev match built in on a lot of your manual cars where you
Yeah,
can
it's
turn
cheating.
on.
Firstly, thank you for calling me a hot shoe. I kind of like that. So it's a long time since anybody called me a hot shoe, but I'll take that at my age. But it's yeah, all these things. You're right. The technology makes all. I mean, technology makes all these things. We're going to talk about the new Edmunds U-Drag series in a minute because that's coming back next week. But all the technology is making these cars easier and easier to sort of play with. And, does it take away from the skill? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. It makes, I think it makes it fun and accessible. The only thing it doesn't have, right? It's got a drift brake. What doesn't this car have? Which I think is quite surprising.
It does not have a manual
It
transmission.
does not have a manual transmission because I looked at this thing and I thought this is a 911T. This is Ford
Yeah.
doing a Porsche 911T, which is basically going to take a few little bits from across the range and some of the higher spec models, bolt them onto an entry level car, charge a little bit more for it, but basically let's go for the real enthusiast with this car and use it as a halo and stuff. And they did all that, and then they're not selling the manual version. And maybe
Yeah.
they're just like the kids don't care. Maybe the kids, nobody's teaching them to drive a manual. Nobody's interested. Nobody's going to buy it. So what the hell? We'll just do the auto. But it did seem, having come for something that feels a bit more like purist orientated, it's a bit weird then to say we're not doing the manual.
I'm guessing it's one of two reasons. It's either one, the only way to really get the drift brake to work in this capacity and in all of these cars well is to have the automatic. Or two, they just crunch the numbers and they just don't sell any manual EcoBoost cars.
I was
And
actually trying to remember, do they even do a manual? Can you get a manual EcoBoost now? I know I should know this, but can you get a manual EcoBoost now?
that's a good question. And
But I
I
think you
don't
might be
know.
right that if you start doing all this stuff, then you start to lose. Um, if you start playing around with the electronics and everything else, then you need the control that an automatic box gives you. I think this is what people don't. Everything's got so complicated. The emissions regulations aren't as severe in the US as they are, say, in Europe. But like talking to Porsche, and I think we mentioned this on the show before, the reason the manual gearbox is under threat at Porsche and the reason it's on so few cars now has got nothing to do with building it or the cost or the demand. It's all to do with the fact that you can't control the fueling and you can't control the emissions in the same way. So it becomes more and more difficult to have a manual box because the computers can't do their magic basically. And that's why when you put in a hybrid system, it gets harder and harder. So there's a lot of reasons why having a clutch and everything else becomes more difficult. But I
Yeah.
just looked at it and I thought you've kind of done a purist Mustang. I like what you're doing here. You're trying to appeal to the youth. Is this sort of like a 45 grand 911T? And it's almost.
Almost, but drift brake would have been a priority over manual transmission.
Yeah, for this audience, I get it. I get it. But yeah, I think it's a fun car. I think it's good that they're doing something in the EcoBoost because I do look at the range and you look at the Dark Horse and you think, my God, it's 70 grand. And,
Yeah.
we've just done, I mean, it's probably a segue into it, but I think we talked about briefly, there's the supercharging it. But also we're bringing back Edmunds U-Drags after a short break. We filmed it. We filmed it last week. First one's going live next Friday or next Thursday. So this Thursday, as you listen to the show, and that first one is featuring our supercharged Mustang. But our supercharged Mustangs, we bought the Dark Horse with the track pack, and then when you layer on 15 grand's worth of supercharger and installation, suddenly you're up at like $85,000. And let's face it, that's an awful lot of money to spend on a Mustang that isn't a Shelby.
Yeah. But does it perform? So you guys installed this supercharger on the Mustang. You took it out to the test track. Brian Wong on your team did a good video on on getting this dyno tuned and getting the dyno numbers on it. And that one's worth a watch because if you're not familiar with that process, and it's not something that's normally what Edmunds does, right? You don't dyno tune all dyno test all of these cars, but Ford claims the supercharger package is 810 horsepower. Now the reality is we're in California and it's unlikely we get to see any of the numbers that other places get to see. And I found this out with my Mustang Mach 1 as well when we did the twin turbo package on it, which is an emissions tested. It might be emissions legal now. Maybe they got the number, but it passed all the tests. They're waiting for the paperwork, and an emissions approved carb legal 50 state twin turbo package, just like this supercharger package is. And that's one of the reasons why you guys went with the Ford Performance solution is it's 50 state emissions legal. It comes with a warranty if it's installed by a Ford dealer or an authorized installer, and then you basically get a supercharged Mustang that's not a GT500 with a 3-year 36,000 mile powertrain warranty.
That's right. And Galloping Autosports installed it for us here in LA. We've worked with them before, obviously a very professional, slick operation. They did a nice job of installing it. Took it to the dyno, which is, I think the other thing, again, we don't want to get like too technical necessarily, but there's a big difference between the horsepowers that are manufacturer quotes is basically at the crankshaft, but the dyno is measuring what happens at the tires, and there are always losses in the sort of transmission process. So you were saying Ford is claiming 810 at the crankshaft, which compares with, that's how every brand basically announces their horsepower. At the dyno, and again, watch the video, it's a really interesting explanation of the process and why it matters. We got 630 horsepower and 521 pounds-feet of torque. Now, yeah, so maybe if you calculate back, it's a little bit down on the 810 because we're in California, but it's still quite a significant uplift. And then the next thing for us was, right, what does this mean? And we tested it at the test track. You don't have launch control on this car, so everything's on your right foot. We took it down then to the Edmunds U-Drags track last.
It's an automatic. Let's make that clear.
It's an automatic as well.
Automatic transmission.
So, well, Dark Horse, you can have manual, and if you get the manual, this is perverse really, but if you get the manual, you can get the launch control. That comes with launch control. If you get the automatic, it doesn't, for reasons.
Just weird because it seems so easy in the automatic. Just left foot brake and hammer it down and good to go.
Nobody at Ford has given us an appropriate, or nobody at Ford has really given us a proper explanation as why manual has it, auto doesn't. The other thing about Dark Horse compared to the old Shelby had a double clutch transmission, which was fantastic. The Dark Horse doesn't. It basically just has what I call a more conventional automatic, which feels right now like the weak link in the whole car. But what the Dark Horse does have, if you have the track pack, is super, super sticky tires. So Pirelli Trofeo RS tires, which are, I think, were built for, if I get this right, if I remember rightly, I think they were on the Pagani. They're on the 911 GT3 RS. So they are a lot of tire for a Mustang. Yeah. I mean, they look like hand-cut slicks. There's almost no tread in them. They're not good to drive if it's cold or it's wet.
Yeah.
Take an Uber.
You kind of need, like, I did this on my Mach 1 too. It's like you got to have a second set. I just got another set of wheels and tires and kept our compounds basically for more spirited driving.
More spirited driving on a very warm day when you've had a chance to warm it up. We've just shot the whole series of Edmunds U-Drags. We did 11 races, which was a really amazing team effort. We did that in 2 days. It's quite a thing. It's quite an operation now. And what I think really stuck out for me was everybody talks about like brakes, carbon ceramic, not carbon ceramic. We had a lot of very high performance cars. I'm not going to kind of completely give the game away here, but we had a lot of high performance cars. Carbon ceramic or not carbon ceramic, tires for me is the really big differentiator. If you've got a set of super high performance tires on it, we just look at the numbers, the braking, the cornering, the ultimate grip. Huge difference if you prep them, and you've got to get them warm, you've got to get them into operating temperature. You feel a bit like Formula One. It's all like, how was my outlap prep is determines whether I'm on
Yeah.
pole or not. It's a little bit like that. It's like if you sat in the start line and I know when the cameras goes down, it needs new battery. Like, I'm losing tire temp, and it sounds silly, but it really makes a huge difference. And we had cars with ceramic brakes, which were a bit like on the braking, and cars without ceramic brakes but had super sticky tires, where you're like, whoa, you can really lean on this car.
Yeah. So we'll get into some of the results later when the U-Drags videos come out, but you did have the car at the test track, and compared to, let's say, the normal Dark Horse to the supercharged Dark Horse to the GT500, it's definitely much closer to the GT500 as far as performance. And I think you're like a tenth or two away, 0 to 60. I'm not quite sure where you were on the quarter mile, but even with trying to baby it a little bit off the line and no launch control, and you just being the hot shoe that you are.
It wasn't me driving. Yeah, I've
Well,
got the
at the
figures
test
here for you,
track, it
Matt.
was.
I had a quick Google while you were yabbering away and mocking me. It's yeah, Dark Horse with supercharger at our track, 3 point. So Dark Horse 4.4 to 60, Shelby GT 500 3.9, Dark Horse with supercharger 3.7 for the GT 500 with launch control, 3.9 for the supercharged Dark Horse without it. By the time you get to quarter, of course, less of a traction issue.
Yeah.
12.6 for the standard car, 11.3 for the Shelby, and 11.6 for the supercharged. So it only loses another tenth between between the 60 miles an hour and then to the quarter. But braking 60 to 0 on those tires, 99 feet, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's up there with high performance Porsches and everything else, and even the standard. That's a very strong performance. But
So just on the issue of power. So out here, because you got 630 horsepower to the tires, and there's
yeah,
roughly a 10 to 20% drivetrain loss, probably on average 15%, maybe a little more through that automatic transmission. So I know Ford says it's 810 horsepower package, maybe out of state on proper fuel and the right octane, and
yeah, we were
that maybe
using. To be
even that
fair,
out
we
of
were
state
using
calibration.
octane booster. Yeah.
Um, you're probably getting about 750 horsepower at the crank, much, much closer to that 760 of the GT500. So the GT500 to be 2/10ths quicker, maybe 0 to 60 in that quarter mile, is really probably just a function of that launch control and the DCT
I,
transmission.
I,
I
I
think that car is
agree.
incredibly fast with that automatic transmission.
I agree. And if we go to I'm going to also share the figures that we got from the Edmunds U-Drag track. We have our test track, which is down in LA, which is more akin to road tarmac in terms of grip level. The for the Edmunds U-Drags, where we need a lot more, clearly need a lot more space and a lot more width. It's a different exercise. We use is top secret airfield, but being an airfield, it's very grippy, and you start to see that. So like the 0 to 60 drops from 3.9 to 3.7, and that's really just to do with probably prepping the tires a bit better, because we've got a bit more space to,
Yeah.
there's a burnout section at the airfield where everybody's laid a load of rubber down. So it probably is two things. I think it's prepping the tires and then a bit of extra grip from the airfield. Whereas at the test track, we try and come up with numbers which are relevant to the real world. So, people aren't prepping the tires at the traffic lights. So we're trying that. So quarter is 11.5. What did I say it was at our test track? 11.6. So yeah, we're pretty much matching it to the quarter. But you look at going back to the tire bit, I look at the maximum cornering on a grippy surface, 1.25 G.
That's
That's in the middle of the
fantastic.
race. That's a hell of a result.
Yeah.
There is a car which we'll talk about on another show, which just done 1.37.
Wow.
Might have a very big rear wing on it. So that's but if I compare that, I'm not going to give away the result of the first race, because we're launching it on Thursday. So you've got a couple of, depending on when you listen to this, Thursday, oh my God, what date is it?
Yeah, it'll be
23rd.
out. It'll be out when
Thursday,
this.
October the 23rd. Probably not as you're
Oh no,
listening.
not out yet. Not out yet. Yeah.
So
So a
we're
couple
planning on
more
going
days.
live on October the 23rd, 6 a.m. in the morning if you're that excited. So first race, I don't mind giving away Mustang Dark Horse Supercharged against Corvette Stingray. In the last series, Stingray comfortably beat the Dark Horse, and we said then we're going to supercharge it. We're going to come back. Can Ford get its revenge? I'm going to share a few figures with you. So Corvette was not unexpectedly way faster off the line, mid-engined, launch control, traction control on the whole shebang. 3.3 to 60. And bear in mind, this is not the Z06, it's not the E-Ray. This is
Yeah.
the entry level Corvette, like
I know everyone's
3.3 to
talking about
60.
Z06 and ZR1, but don't sleep on the Stingray. That car is amazing.
This car is like, because you may remember like Edmunds owned one,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, okay, and then everybody, and then suddenly we had to sell it. Well, we didn't, its time with us was done, shall we say. But yeah, it's still an amazing car. So 3.3, where am I with the figures? 3.3 to 60, which is an amazing figure. 11.7 to the quarter. I mean, this is not, this is the entry level Corvette now. At the finish line, it was doing almost 129 miles an hour, 128.6. But the Mustang, 3.7 to 60. So you see, again, watch the video, but the Stingray just boof off the line. Mustang, it's really hard when you're driving it, even if you're a hot shoe like me. Thank you, Matt. It's really hard when you're driving it. You've got your left foot on the brake, and you're just trying to basically build up a little bit of power in the torque video of your right foot. So we were kind of holding it around. I was doing around sort of 1700 RPM. You can see it on the dashboard, and then you're hearing in your ear this kind of like. You're hearing in your ear this kind of 3, 2, 1, and then you're desperately watching this Corvette go away, and you just got to be so patient because it's like, right, I've got to like feather my left foot off, right foot on, don't get too excited, don't light the rear up, and just drive it away. And on a couple of practice runs, both Jonathan and I was doing Jonathan Alfallen was doing in the other case, both it was like really hard to like focus your mind to let the other car go because it's gonna beat you off the line.
Yeah.
But still do a good launch. And obviously, but like we managed to do 3.7 to 60, so that's still a very fast time. But that was the sort of mentality. And then once it's up and running, then you get all that horsepower when you haven't got the traction, and then it's just mighty under the brake. So as I say, 1.25 G in the corner, but the Corvette did 1.17. I mean that's not on such aggressive tires. But across the line, the Mustang was pulling 138.1 miles an hour. So what I would say, it's well worth a watch because the Corvette, it's the tortoise in the hare. The Corvette's gone, and then
Yeah.
but you get that top end coming in for the Mustang. It was really exciting, and of course, it all sounds amazing too.
So, and here's a question for you, because the GT 500 has been sold off. You guys had it in the fleet for probably longer than most cars, but you guys enjoyed that car so much. It's really kind of what started the U drag thing. This whole this whole adventure that you guys are doing with U drags was kind of fueled by the GT 500 and it being such a fun car. Is the supercharged Dark Horse fun? Did you guys have fun with that car?
Yeah,
Is it?
we really did. I drove it on the track and I did the video of it on the track, and I was a bit like, is it really just that much better? And it's not a GT 500. I think some of that's the gearbox, some of that's it's just not as sharp. It's not a GT 500, but it is really fun. It sounds ridiculous. The whole the fact that you can turn all the stability control off, you got enough power to slide it. I mean, we did one race which won't make the cut. It was more, if we clearly get a false result, then we don't, we do another run. That's common sense. But came out the bottom corner, got too excited, got too hard on the throttle, and just did like a massive slide. And I haven't seen the footage yet. I've been requesting it the editors when they find it, but just did like a massive slide, tire smoke coming off, engine roaring, lost the race, but like came back feeling utterly heroic. And it's that car, this is
Yeah.
this is just a really fun car to knock around in. But then so is any V8 Mustang, actually. I
Yeah.
think it's still, it is a fun car, and the supercharger and the Black Dark Horse just turns it up a little notch. But it is a chunk of change. The only bit I find difficult with it is, it's 85 grand for a non-Shelby, which probably the Shelbys hold their value pretty well. I'm not
Yeah.
convinced that Dark Horse with a supercharger is going to hold its value like our Shelby did.
No, but it's the one you can drive. If you're worried about putting miles on your Shelby because of that value, Dark Horse, even with or without the supercharger, it's a fun car. Drive it, have fun with
It,
it.
it
Yeah.
is. I think that's absolutely right. It's still quite usable. It's quite practical. Then you got the Corvette, which in the trim that we had it, which had the performance pack on it and everything else, was pushing 90 grand. So basically, pretty much the same price, but totally different experience. Mid-engined, feels like a proper. It has that sort of supercar vibe about it. You
Yeah.
sat low. You've only got a little bit in front. You got the engine behind you. Very, very different feel. The Mustang is a bit of an old bruiser. Front engine, lots of power, too much power for the traction. Corvette is much more of a sophisticated sports car, and it's great that you've got that choice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, U drags next week. We're going to be looking forward to that. When 23rd, October 23rd.
23rd is first one. I think we're going to probably do a show where we get into this in a bit more depth,
Yeah.
which
So
is
next
which is
week
going to be
we'll
fun.
we'll we'll talk about it more because we'll record
We,
again after U
we did
drags
have one
debuts.
really nice moment to share with you. We had where we shoot is it's quite wide open, and sometimes you have problems, particularly at the end of the day. You get like kids trying to come on in there, and all of it. And we thought we had a trespasser, and I hope maybe they're listening to the show. But we thought we had a trespasser, and it turned out to be somebody with binoculars who was like a fan of the show. I was like, "Hey, we're onto something here." If people
So
like
not so secret test track.
not so secret test trap, but I thought that's cool. If
Yeah.
you live locally, you'll recognize where it is. But it's yeah. We sent one of the production teams like go and figure out who the trespasser is, and it was somebody with binoculars because they're a fan of the show. So I enjoyed that. It's
Well,
nice
they
to.
probably couldn't find you until you went on your big drift and unintentionally in the dark
Yeah,
horse. It probably did a cloud of smoke
yeah,
in the air. They're like, now we know where it is.
yeah. I don't
All
want to
right.
figure out how much we spent on tires on that Mustang. That's the other problem with these tires is these RSs are fantastic, but they're very soft and very sticky. And anybody who watches motorsport will know fast, sticky, soft tires don't tend to last very well.
No, and that's probably
Particularly if you
$1,000 a corner for that
particularly if you
tire.
want to warm them up and
Yeah.
burn some rubber to warm them up and then you lean on them. Yeah.
All right. We've got to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Okay. All the fun stuff aside, that's not all we have going on. You guys got into uh, another vehicle. You got into the Porsche Cayenne EV. Porsche's been kind of up in the air. It's like, are we doing all this EV stuff? Are we not going to do this EV stuff? Their their boss, I guess the CEO of Porsche and VW, that's kind of sharing duties. Um, they just announced that like we're not doing that anymore. He's gonna maybe just step aside and do one
Yeah.
thing or the other, and it's not going to be Porsche.
You and I have read the same press release this morning that, yeah, Olivier Bloom, isn't it? Who was basically the head, I've got it here, was the head of the Volkswagen Group. I mean, people have these like extraordinary jobs. I mean, imagine being head of the Volkswagen Group. Oh, and by the way, you're also CEO of Porsche. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like, oh, okay.
right.
So now they're changing it. So Porsche's going to have its own CEO dedicated to the brand. A guy who was actually Dr. Michael Leiters, who was recently been CEO of McLaren, but ex Ferrari, CTO of Ferrari, CEO of McLaren. But before that, he was a Porsche for a long time. So he's been around the sports car world. Now he's taking over Porsche. Yeah, I mean that we talked about before that they're in a bit of a mess. If you look at the share price, they went all in on an EV strategy, and now they're backpedaling furiously to bring gas engines back into Cayennes and back into back into Macau sorts of things. They're
Yeah.
having, and the problem is all this is costing them billions, and I mean billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So
And
tough times.
meanwhile, Volkswagen has been having layoffs and stuff as well. So,
Yeah.
The Volkswagen Group often relied on Porsche's profits to carry the overall company, but profits are dwindling, and then you're going to add tariffs onto that. It's going to be,
This is the challenge. You're right. I mean, if you looked at Volkswagen Group, what was holding the group up really was Audi and Porsche. Because there's better margin in it. Out Porsche's profit margin. I mean, Ferrari's profit margin is way beyond anybody else, but then Porsche's super profitable, and Porsche's probably the only, big sort of what you'd call higher volume brand that turns big profits. Audi, much more profitable than Volkswagen itself. But now Porsche's, it's tough because you could look at it and, people will be writing this history in a few years' time. You could look back at it and say, really stupid decision making to go all in on EVs when you're a sports car manufacturer. But at the time when they made those decisions, and Volvo made basically the same decisions as a family SUV brand, by 2030 or at worst 2035, everything was going to be electric anyway. So if you're not building millions and millions of cars, you've got to place a bet. They were looking at it saying, oh, China's the big market, Europe, the US, let's go EV first and, we'll ride out the wave. Now, because of everything that's happened politically and everything else, now US has done this big U-turn. Everybody's having to pivot. Everybody's losing a ton of money. So Porsche is basically in this world now where they're about to roll out the Cayenne EV, which was supposed to be the great hope.
yeah,
And now it's going to come to market in a world where everybody's going to be talking about the fact that they're trying to re-engineering everything for gas engines, which doesn't really take away from what the Cayenne EV will be. I mean, we've just done not the Edmunds EV range. This was something with a prototype car on a Porsche route around LA, but we did well over 300 miles, which is what we'd expect. I think it would be madness to launch a car like this with under 300 miles. I mean,
yeah,
Tesla told me a couple of weeks ago that they will not do a car with an EPA rating of less than 300 miles. So, that we're going to go and see the Macan EV, sorry, the Cayenne EV shortly in its undisguised form. It's I think it's going to be a really strong car, but it's going to be a load of money. And you wonder how big the market for it is because the Macan EV has, I wouldn't say it's unloved, but it's not loved in the way that the gas Macan has been for what, a decade or more.
yeah. And then the Cayenne EV that you guys did, this prototype with the 328 miles, um, Porsche, of course, always does several versions, right? They do their base models, they do maybe an S and a turbo or GT or whatever. So, um, what version? This is basically the base version. So 328 miles is probably the most we're going to see out of a Cayenne
Yeah,
EV. Not that it's bad, it's good miles, but from there, the more high performance variants are going to tick down a little bit in the range department.
yeah, it sort of depends a little bit on. I think I can't remember whether they're doing two battery packs, but I think yeah, at the moment I think that's probably where it's going to land, and yeah, then they may well, whether they've engineered to have more battery pack, or also as the car evolves, are they going to get more efficiency out of the battery? So suddenly you get more power for the same space and the same cost. It's, as they update the car through its life. And, this is one of the challenges that the technology is still evolving. And, this is not going to be a cheap car. This is going to be a 150 grand car. I don't see how it's any less with
Yeah,
everything that's going on in the world. We think that we paid 100 grand for our Macan, and that was a you know, relatively basic model. Cayenne's going to be, a lot more expensive than that. Range
yeah,
Rover EV is going to be 200 grand. And, we had going back to the Edmunds Udrex chat, we did have a Carrera S there without giving the whole game away. And, that was 180 grand. And I went through the spec and I was like, there's nothing really here that I wouldn't have.
a
It
Carrera
wasn't
S for
like,
180 grand, like that was Turbo S money
and
not
this
that
is
long
why
ago.
the tariffs plus all the costs and everything else, costs keep going up, and then it's where's are there enough people with 180 grand to spend on a car which is sort of mid-range 911? Then you got
Yeah,
the GTS, and that's before you get into turbo. And suddenly turbos, GT3s are 300 grand. Turbos can be even more than that, and it's like, whoa, this is like serious money. I mean, how many people have got 300, 400 grand to spend on a car?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because for me, the appeal of 911 was getting such a well sorted sports car with so much history and community and for many models like the certain 911 resale value and wasn't anywhere near like Ferrari money, and now it's all Ferrari money.
Well, apart from the Ferraris are now 700 grand.
Yeah, right.
But I drove home. We'll talk about it in another show. I drove home and I've got an Audi SQ5 parked outside. The new it's the first time I've driven the new Q5. It's over 70 grand.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit underwhelming for that money, but I don't know. We need to do a proper deep, yeah, I think we should do a show where we really kind of dig into all of this. Because for me, a lot of the sort of mainstream brands, like Hyundai Palisade drove recently, even things like the new Volkswagen Touran, not the Touran, the what's the little one, Tiguan.
Tiguan.
Those funny names. That's a really nice car for like in the 30s. And there seems
Yeah.
to be now a lot of the mainstream brands are doing great products in that sort of 30 to 40 grand range. And the luxury brands often made overseas and all of these challenges are suddenly like, whoa, hang on a minute, we're 100 grand, we're 150 grand. And they seem, it's tough. It's really tough out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens to some of these brands and how it's going to pan out. Like we said, with tariffs and yeah, and just costs. Meanwhile, there's like the Hyundai group, the Hyundai, Kia, Genesis. It's like posting record sales, record numbers. Like they're just going gangbusters.
And they also have I mean, they're doing great product, but they also have a slightly different business model, which I think helps them to think a bit more long term.
Yeah,
You're not in the Volkswagen Group situation in quite the same way, where you're just looking over your shoulder at the share price, and you've got the unions on your back, and you've got this, and you've got that, and the politics, and that is a messy job right now.
yeah,
And the Chinese, obviously, the other thing is we don't have the Chinese brands here in the way that you do in Europe, particularly in the UK, and that's changing the landscape as well. So, yeah, interesting times. But Ford just brought out a new EcoBoost Mustang with lots of fluorescent green paint, so all is not
yes.
lost.
Called Hyper Lime,
Is that what
which
it's
is a
called? Hyper Lime.
Hyper Lime. It's a term I learned about during that presentation, but yeah, it's good. It's fun. All right, we're gonna
I'm just
we're gonna
imagining
wrap
the
things up.
marketing meeting. It's not just lime; it's Hyper Lime.
Hyper Lime. Well, I think they had that color already in the RTR
Uh,
brand before they brought it to that Mustang. It was something that they were working on for probably something they've had for a while because everyone had the hat and the
yeah.
shirt and everything. I've got
Don't
I've
just
got
give me lime. Give me more.
yeah. And they were handing out shirts and they were hyper lime. It's that fluorescent
Yeah.
color. And I was like, this shirt's perfect if I'm going to go for a jog or a bike ride in the middle of the night
Yeah.
because I will be seen for
It's
sure.
nearly Halloween. You'll be fine.
Yeah. I've looked like I have one of those safety vests. I just got off a job site. But um, all right, we're going to wrap things up. Next week, when we're on the show, the first of the U-Drag videos will drop. So take a look at that and maybe we'll get into a little bit more of what's going on. Anything
Oh,
else before we run?
no, apologies for yawning. If I was on YouTube, I said a massive yawn. I'm just tired. It's been a long week. But I'm clinging on. Thank you, everybody, for
Well, it's
listening,
Friday, so
bearing
it's
with us.
end of the day. You're welcome to
I
it.
did a I did a team I did a presentation to the company yesterday. There was I don't know how many people were online, a couple of hundred, two or three hundred or something, and my computer froze in the middle of it, which is so it's been that kind of week.
Ugh. All right. Well, hopefully you have a good weekend.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks, guys. And until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.